There are some really awesome moves in the game that a lot of players end up unlocking. Tackle, slash, thrash, stomp, double edge, etc. These attacks are all really great techniques that can be viable during your entire playthrough. However, they all have one thing in common. They're all normal type. And this isn't a bad thing. The vast majority of the most viable builds in the meta got to where they are because of how good their normal type moves are. But today we're going to push past the normal type moves and analyze the other possibilities that exist, the elemental moves. While they take a huge amount of evolution points to spec into, the meta right now is pretty much centered around normal type moves, and as a result, resistance to elemental type attacks is generally almost non-existent. With that said, let's get into it. So probably the most popular example of this is the electric eel. Just like its name implies, this build forgoes the popular choice of speccing into fins, teeth, and well, really any aesthetics at all, and sinks all of its evolution points into a single signature move, Discharge. This electric type attack is a short-range AoE burst move that can be used both offensively and defensively. Its damage scales inversely with the target's size, so while it can insta-gib entire parties of fish, most larger builds will walk away with only minimal HP loss. That is, unless it crits and procs a cardiac arrest or a seizure. Since this move can be used both on offense and defense, and has almost no counterplay besides just tanking it and trying to escape, I rank the electric eel as A tier, held back from S tier only by its low intelligence and low mobility due to lack of strong fins. Next up, we have a group of fish players who traded HP, strength, and defense for one of the only range attacks in the game, the Archerfish. Archerfish can use the move Water Gun. This move doesn't do much damage, but it has a high chance of knocking small targets off their feet, which can of course combo straight into pretty much anything. In order to actually spec into this move, not only did these players need to invest in the structural evolution required to cast this ability, but they also had to greatly increase their intelligence in order to be able to aim their shots. Connecting a hit with this move requires you to intuit how far away your target is, how much force is needed to knock it down, and also gauge the distortion effect of light refraction. While this is all very impressive, personally I don't see Archerfish as exceptionally viable in the meta, for a few reasons. Most importantly, this ability has no defensive use, in a meta where defense is extremely important. Furthermore, this ability requires the player to camp at the surface of the water, which is precisely where you don't want to be if you're playing on the same server as Eagles, Hawks, and other high-tier aerial builds. With all this considered, I'd put the Archerfish at the top of C tier. Ranged attacks are extremely effective, but you need a solid foundation for them to really excel. If you're looking for a good ranged build, be sure to watch my video on optimizing snakes. Or if you're picky enough that you want an aquatic build with ranged or elemental abilities, definitely research the Orca, a build so incredibly overpowered that I'm just going to need to make an entirely separate video on them. The last build I want to talk about today possesses an explosive fire-type move, the Bombardier Beetle. This is an example of how sometimes there are abilities that are worth going through an entire skill tree of boring and weak abilities just to get to. In this case, the Beetle players who unlocked this ability had to spec deep into the chemistry tree, which is pretty much all composed of gross and unappealing powers like skunk smells and anti-debuff agents. Most insect players do spend a few points here and unlock one or two abilities in this tree. However, if you unlock enough of these at the same time, they can be simultaneously used to produce a completely different move, one of the only fire-type moves available in the entire game, Fire Blast. This can of course inflict a burn, which both does damage and inflicts its target with a serious debuff to many important stat modifiers like the immune system. But really, all of those effects are just icing on the cake. All these players really need this ability for is to escape disadvantageous situations, either by blinding the enemy or causing them to flinch so that they miss their chance to attack. Since beetles are already minimum B tier, I would say that this excellent defensive move firmly puts them in A tier, kept out of S tier because they still lack the most powerful insect-exclusive ability in the game, which I'll cover in another video. Anyways, in summary, elemental type attacks are costly, so you really need to weigh your options and plan out your build in advance before you attempt them. New players are almost always better off sticking to good all-rounder builds, like the bear, iguana, and boar. But if you're clever about it, you can really get some amazing gameplay out of these unique abilities.